Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to your host for this 4-week webinar, Deborah Olshan Cooper. Deborah Olshan Cooper has been an entrepreneur and CEO of several companies in the past 30 years, including Real Life Communications, one of New York premier luxury, fashion, entertainment, music, and beauty public relations, marketing, and social media firm. When she moved to South Florida, she opened Fresh Connect Public Relations and Marketing, where she steered several clients into well-known brands. In addition, while a short stint in New Jersey, she began Daycation Today, a full-service staycation concept allowing mothers to take a day for themselves by providing services, treatments, educational consulting to give moms a me day. Deborah started Your Career Design Lab to bring the same sensibility of 30 years of writing and producing client stories to bring them to their rightful place in the spotlight, whether on television, newspaper, or magazines. Deborah has experience designing and producing other people's stories to garner the attention they deserve. Her passion is young adults and has been exceptionally successful in identifying and creating young graduate stories in a way that sends their resume to the top. Clients work one-on-one with Ms. Cooper and then role plays to ensure they encompass their story. Upon completion, Ms. Cooper helps young graduates find their rightful place in finding their career through her varied networking contacts. Ms. Cooper guides you step by step through the career landfields and into their perfect career. So I'd like to hand it over to Deborah.
Thank you so much, Rivka. I greatly appreciate that introduction. Tonight is going to be so fun. What I'd like to show you is how in your interviewing process, you are able to excavate your last 4 years of college and even before then. It could be your internships, your jobs, your extracurriculars, your community service. Let's find those stories and passion that put you on the map. And we do that, it's like everything in life, right? We hear stories all the time. We're watching Netflix. That's a story. Somebody's telling you a story. Those are the kinds of stories you want to bring into potential employers. Those are the stories that you want to make somebody feel what you are all about. So tonight, we're going to start that and start to delve into some of the questions that instead of saying, I did this, I did that, you can actually excavate a story that will make somebody feel and know who you are. When you go into an office and somebody asks you what your strengths is, you do not want to talk in ambiguity. You want to talk from strength. And what I mean by that, again, is your story. So I'm going to open it up to you guys, and I'm going to ask you, what is your strength? And from there, we're going to start to craft something a little bit more in depth, as something that brings you to life. Let's start.
I'd probably say my strengths are definitely communication, and I think I present myself pretty well. And I guess just my organization, and yeah, you put me on the spot. That's the whole point. But I know.
And Zoe, what would you say?
I'd probably say I'm like really analytical, so like super detail oriented, and I'm very determined. So when I get a project or something, I stick with it, and I'm determined to finish it and finish well.
Okay. What if I was to say to you guys, and I want you to think about this, this is the situation, right? So as a potential employer, I know nothing about you. That's what I'm talking about, ambiguity. What you want to say, or what you might want to, and this is what we're going to go into, is what your bottom line is. And I'm just making up a story right now, right? But it could be, my strength is I've moved, since I was 5 years old, we've moved over 20 times. And every time we've moved, I've had to make new friends, learn new curriculum, fit in with the crowds. And each time I was able to do that. I remember in 5th grade and something happened, but I was able to pull all A's. But I realized in my 8th school, when I was doing something, I really wanted to go to a great college. And I was able to do that by getting involved in clubs. So I guess my strength is that no matter what situation I've ever been in the 10 years that I've gone to 5 schools, that I've been able to achieve and maintain my GPA and make new friends and get internships and work with jobs throughout my life. That becomes a very different narrative. That shows me as a potential employer who, what, how you are. Does that resonate with both of you? Right. So we're going to talk more about that. The same question be, what are your weaknesses? What would you say, Libby, for your weakness?
I'd probably say my weakness is I can take a lot of time on something. So something like even just an email, I analyze it too much to a point where like it should have just been sent. So I kind of see that as a weakness just because I spend too much time focusing my time on one thing versus getting the task done.
Okay. And Zoe?
I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I feel like sometimes it works against me where like I don't start something because I want it to be perfect. So I guess procrastination.
Okay. And that would be your typical answers that you would give, right? But when you talk about your weakness, again, you want to go in specific. There was a time that I did a project, and because I spent so much time on it, it became past due, and the project that we're working on became obsolete. But what I learned, and then what you always want to come back with, but what I learned from my weakness is that I can do this now. I monitor my time, or I put a thing on my time that I know if I'm going into perfectionism or if I'm going into, is this right? I say, okay, move on, change the channel, let's move forward. So you always want to come back with a strength, even if you talk about your weaknesses. And some other things I want you guys to think about. What would you like your career to look like 5 years from now? When a potential employer asks you that, and you're going in for a specific job, you want to have done your research. And what I mean by that, you want to have looked at the company. You want to look who the players are, how many years they've been there, what schools they've come from, so that you can bring that in. You know, Maya Angelou actually said, and I don't know if you've heard this, and I love this, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. And that is really the basis for telling your story. If we can separate you from the pack so that your story resonates with a potential employer, you're halfway there, more than halfway there. I think, Zoe, you're shaking your head, yes, like you can see that. Similar to 5 years from now, if you embed yourself into what that company culture looks like and how you can be a player in it, that would make a huge difference then. Well, I really see myself like this. That's taking yourself out of the interview. You want to be in that interview and play it again like you belong there. In 5 years, I see myself as president of this company because I've seen that, you know, Susie Q started out in the same position that I'm going for. I noticed that in year 5, she was able to do this. You really got to know your script and know your worth in that company. What do you know about the industry? That is key. Whatever industry you guys are going for, you need to know everything about it so that, again, you can bring in to the company what you know. Here's a perfect example. I had a client who actually went to Syracuse University, Zoe, by the way. Woo. And she decided that she wanted to be in the music business. And she came to me about March of that year that she was graduating in May. So I said, wonderful. Are you in the music business, music school? No. Have you written anything for any music magazines up there? No. Oh, so you were on the music newspaper? No. What? Now I'm getting scared. What have you done in the music business? I don't know. I just really want to be in it. From there, I introduced her to the magazine up there. There's a magazine, I forgot, it's called Watts, 21 Watts. And she became the A&R person for 21 Watts, bringing like your local bands to your school. In addition, she was in a sorority and she raised money for a cancer thing called Fuck Cancer. Well, we came to find out by doing the research that Scooter Braun, one of the biggest producers who produced Taylor Swift at the time, wife had cancer, and she started Fuck Cancer. So again, the story became, hi, Scooter Braun, I'm looking for an internship in your company. By the way, I was able to raise $25,000 through my sorority for your wife's cancer foundation. Who do you think got hired? Right? It's that connection, you guys. It's finding that little gem. Now, you might find that when you do your to-do list, which could, oh yeah, I raised money for that. Oh yeah, that person said that. And to further go on with that, I happen to know a friend who is vice president of Epic Records. So I told her to get on the train from Syracuse down, and she's like, I'm not getting on the train. I can't meet with this person. I'm not going to get on the train now. She got on the train. She met with him. She walked out with a goodie bag. She said it was the best day of her life. I'm sure there's been better days since then, but it was still pretty cool. He happened to know somebody up at Syracuse who at iHeartRadio would DJ. And he does a podcast on how you balance school life at Syracuse. I just happen to be, but I know people at Libya as well, at UCF, and work. She did a podcast with him. We were able to put that on her resume. Again, setting her apart from the rest of the pack. So there's just one example of knowing about your industry. Can you describe a time when your work was criticized? Again, detail. It was one time where my boss told me this, but you know what? I realized next time I went over and above by doing this. Always come back with what you learned. What's your greatest failure? Why? And what did you learn from it? Kids today all feel like they're not accepted to fail. And I just spoke at Live Nation in LA, and that is one of the greatest strengths is knowing your failure and having failures. That's something a company was really interested in. So let's think about that as well. And what was the most difficult period in your life, and how did you deal with it? And here's one that people ask. If you were at a business lunch and you ordered a rare steak and they brought it well, what would you do? And you might say, oh, that's like the stupidest question I've ever heard. But that tells a lot about your character. A lot of these questions deal with personality, career, and situational questions that every employer will ask. And tell me about your proudest achievement. So I'm going to go back to you guys. Zoe, we'll start with you. What would you say was your proudest achievement?
In my life, like not academically, just.
Right.
Well, I guess it goes without saying graduating from college, but that's really cliche. Probably when I transformed my body through fitness. So when I was able to do my first couple of pull-ups, I realized that I had control over my body. And that was a really proud moment for me.
You know what? I really like that. And on the to-do list or on this question, I want you to expound on that. Because you know what, you guys? You always want, whatever you say when we tell our stories, you always want to include the who, what, where, why, and how. You don't want the employer, like I'm sitting here, Zoe, if you were to say that to me and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. Maybe I transformed my body. Maybe I was like 200 pounds so I could relate to you in that way. But I want to know how. Like, what was your story? Were you 200? Like, did you have disease? Did you have diabetes or your family's from? I want to know the who, what, where, why, and how for every story that you guys create. And Libby, what would you say is your proudest achievement?
Yeah, it's actually crazy, Zoe, you said that because, I have a lot of health issues and dealing with like autoimmune. And I was able to just recently come from a really bad flare-up in March to completely go into remission like this week. I found out all my inflammatory markers came down. So I guess for me, it's just like that self-discipline because I do it without medication and I'm more of like a natural way of healing my body. And so it's just been really rewarding to know that I did that myself without having to rely on medication or any doctors or have that sickness hinder over me. So that's probably my proudest achievement, is going into remission. So
Oh, I would say so.
yeah.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
There's a great story there, and I want to know your background. You know, if I was in a potential employer, what are all the struggles you've gone through and how you've been able on your own to do that? So again, you guys, you're important in life. Your stories, your background is important and brings value to a company. And again, and the last thing would be, what are your 3 positive things that you can say about yourself? And again, not one-line answers, but overall, what are the things you're proud of? What have you done to change yourself, change your family, change your world? You know, it doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something, again, really personal. And by you guys working on this week, when we come back next week, we're going to flush it out. And you're going to be able to walk away with really good stories. So Zoe or Libby, if somebody's on the phone or somebody goes, oh, just like 1 minute, or they're like looking completely bored, they're not going to be, because you're going to be engaging them and they're going to be so interested in what you have to say. And you know what? You're going to go in with confidence and nothing's going to be able to persuade you, because you're going to know your role. And so those are some of the things that I want you guys to think about, okay, as you go, as you continue. You know, one of the things that we could go, I want to introduce to you a client of mine, which I think will be really helpful. Her name is Samantha Leggetti. And when Samantha came to me, she had graduated from WashU, and she's done a lot of things, and she's traveled and she's done a lot of things, but she hadn't really gotten a job of her dreams yet. She hadn't really found the one thing. And you know, like you guys, it's really hard to find that first one job that's going to give you what you need to continue your passions and to get you to where you want to go. So I'd like to introduce, if she's here, I'd like to introduce Sam to you both, and she can tell you a little bit about how working with your career design lab helped her to form her story and what her interviewing process looked like. This is Sam, and I had the pleasure of working with her. And so Sam, I just want to ask you, maybe you could tell Zoe and Libby what it was like when you came to me, what your background was, and your kind of story.
Yeah, sure. So when I first met Deborah, I was really looking for a job that I had marketing experience. I worked at a marketing company for about a year and a half. I was a literature major, and I knew that I loved storytelling and writing and being creative to help businesses grow. But it was hard for me to connect the dots. I wasn't sure what was next, and I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go. And I had an idea that I wanted to work at a competitive agency and be in that setting to really push my skills and be around really, motivated, smart people. And Deborah helped me by asking all the right questions. She helped me figure that out and articulate that for myself, because I went to a college with that kind of environment and I was missing it. And yeah, it was hard because I remember when we first talked, I had so many ideas. I thought about working at a nonprofit because I'm also really passionate about mission-driven work, and then also an agency where I'd just work on any accounts, big corporate accounts, whatever, but it would be for the intense environment. But the nonprofit would be for the cause. And then, I had my own freelance business already doing marketing stuff on the side, but it was kind of lonely and I kind of missed having a team and mentors. So I had a lot going on. And the first time we talked, I remember it was so helpful because I just kind of unloaded on Deborah, just sort of everything about me, like what I like, what's hard for me, what's easy for me, what I enjoy, where I see myself going forward, the impact I want to make on the world, what I think my best assets are. And yeah, it was just super helpful to talk that through. And over the next times we met, we came up with my story, my career story, that I would tell employers. And I totally agree. I can't stress that enough. If you have that story really down, it makes you stand out so much. It's so engaging for the employer. And not only that, but then breaking it down into the detailed explanation. So it's like you have your thesis of this is who I am, but then you need all the supporting details. And so we developed, I think, like 15 anecdotes that I could sort of grab and use for any question they threw at me. And it totally worked. I mean, like at the interview, I was so much more prepared because yeah, it didn't really matter what they asked me. I had an answer that would work, that was ready. And it was not about just being like, oh yeah, I think I'm really creative, so I'd be great at this creative agency. It was more like, oh, well, I directed 2 plays my senior year of college, and one of them raised $10,000 for the YWCA. And so I'm really passionate about using my creativity to get results. You know, it was so much more, I had so much more quantifiable data to back up my claims about myself. And also I put together a little presentation that showed all my work in college and in my previous job. And yeah, I just totally recommend that route of being so prepared, because there's nothing worse than underselling yourself. Like, we all have so much to offer companies, and it's easy being in an entry level position thinking you don't, or kind of doubting yourself or having imposter syndrome. But the thing is, you do. You're a new young mind for this new generation. Companies need to be plugged into it, so they need you. And it's just about, don't be afraid. Especially I think women too have this issue of sort of being afraid to, really be confident about what they can bring. But just owning that, I think, is so powerful. Yeah.
That's so great. That is so true, Sam. And Sam was, I have to say, God love her, and I'm sure you guys both have this too. She had a lot going on. So it was
Yeah.
really doing that deep dive of what are the important things. And when she interviewed, we also do networking. So I had her set up with an agency, because for all the things that she wanted to do in life, working with a big advertising, PR, marketing kind of agency, that would help her to catapult into anything else that she wanted to do. Sometimes your first career is just something that kind of uses all of your skill sets so that you've got a background. So now she has all her skill sets, plus she worked on the Hilton. What were some of the clients that you ended up having at the PR firm?
Yeah, so I got hired, and my clients were big name Hilton, Bank of America, Florida Power and Light. Yeah, big companies and important clients to the agency. So I got really amazing exposure working in any team meeting with the client. There would be a senior member present. So just seeing how they spoke with the client, and the way they communicated, and yeah, it was invaluable. It was a really intense experience, but it was like a boot camp in all the professional skills you need, and the way that business at such a high level is done. And that's exactly what I wanted. It's kind of like being paid to learn. But I also realized that I'm not super into extremely rigid hierarchies and power structures. And I've always been super entrepreneurial. So my dad as well, like, it's in my family for sure. So I'm starting my own business now, and I'm using the communication and marketing skills that I learned, and the business skills, and even the softer skills, like how to send a nice email to somebody quickly, or how to keep in contact with people and network. And yeah, I'm really excited about this new venture as well.